שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב. יאללה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב. יאללה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Congregation Orami, especially if it's your first time here ever, or just in a long while. So we're very glad you're here with us to celebrate Shabbat tonight. And a very special welcome to our guest speaker, Kaylee Smith, who will be speaking in about 30 minutes. We're not going to time it. In our first speaker series about mental health, our social action focus this year. We begin our service together in the middle of page 1. Please join me in reading in English, Pieces Coming Together. One part of Judaism is called Tikkun Olam. It says that the world has been broken into pieces, all this chaos, all this discord. And our job, everyone's job, is to try to put the pieces back together, to make things whole again. Maybe we're the pieces. Maybe what we're supposed to do is come together. That's how we end the brokenness. We continue on page 3. I'd like to invite up Lori to light our Shabbat candles this week.
Beneath a broken street lamp, shards of glass and remnants of humanity linger on the sidewalk. A hungry child cries out for food. A widow walks with tears in her eyes. But in her heart, there is still hope for peace. When will the fighting end? Her children ask wearily. She answers patiently. When anger gives way to compassion, when hatred gives way to love, when darkness gives way to light. Promise me one thing, my children. Promise me that you will always act in ways that fill the world with compassion, love, and light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. And at this point in our service, we think of the week that has passed, and we hold on to all of the good things from this past week. So if you had an experience that inspired gratitude, if you have some good news to share, no matter how big or how small, I invite you to share that joy with the community now. Yeah, Sephora? Awesome. What are you bribing them with? No, just kidding. That's awesome news. Yeah, Sarah?
I found out that my brother and my sister-in-law, but most importantly, my tiny nephew, are coming back for Thanksgiving from the West Coast, so I get to see them again. And he will be just about 8 months old then.
Aw, awesome. Stan? Oh, Mazel Tov on your anniversary. Susan? Oh, Mazel Tov. Wonderful. Mazel Tov to Nathan. We thank God for all of these blessings, including the blessing of simply being alive for this moment in time, with the words of Shehecheyanu found at the bottom of page 4. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. And we continue together in English on page 5, reading responsively, "We cannot merely pray." We cannot merely pray to God that wars should be ended, for we know that the world is made in such a way that we must find the path to peace within ourselves and with our neighbors. We cannot merely pray to God to root out prejudice, for we have already been given the insight with which to see the good in all people, if we would only view them with understanding. We cannot merely pray for God to end despair, for we have already been given the power to give help to the helpless and hope to the hopeless, if we would only use our power justly. We cannot merely pray for God to end disease, for we have already been given minds with which to search out cures and healings, if we would only use them constructively. Therefore we pray instead for strength, determination, and willpower, to do instead of only to pray, to become instead of merely to wish. We continue on page 8. We'll sing an abbreviated version of Lecha Dodi, Boi Kala, the last line and the first line. Boi kala, 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 boi kala. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikah. Boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala. We rise for the official call to worship, the Baruch Hu, in the middle of page 9. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. And we continue on the next page, 10, in the middle with "We believe." We believe in tomorrow. We believe that we We believe that poverty need not be permanent and that we need not learn war forever. We believe that there can yet be a time of peace, of justice, and of love for all who live on earth. Let people everywhere be sure that every deed counts, that every word has power. In spite of all its absurdities and frustrations and disappointments, and we continue with the most important prayer, the Shema, at the bottom of page 10. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. Page 11. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'beitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uk'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uk'tavtam המזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני Adonai Elohechem. And we turn to page 13. We read courage responsively. Courage is the strength to stand up when it's easier to fall down and lose hold. It is the conviction to explore new horizons when it's easier to believe what we've been told. Courage is the will to shape our world when it's easier to let someone else do it for us. It is the recognition that none of us are perfect when it's easier to criticize others and fuss. Courage is the power to step forward and lead when it's easier to follow the crowd. There please your sound. It is the spirit that places you on top of the mountain when it's easier to never leave the ground. The foundation of courage is solid, the rock that doesn't roll. Courage is the freedom of our mind, body, and soul. We continue with Mi Chamocha, the bottom of page 14. Ya la 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 ya la 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 kodesh, Noratehi lo tosefele, Noratehi lo tosefele. We continue on page 15 with Vishamru. Vishamru Bnei Israel et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתו לעם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. And we continue at the top of page 15 with the responsive reading, The Power. In each human hand and heart is the power to renew life. To open eyes that have closed in despair, to shelter the weak and shield the helpless. To care for the earth like an old friend, to give its oceans, rivers, and forests our selfless love, to treat ponds and tide pools, the sky and the mountains as sacred living beings. And we continue with our central prayer, the Amidah, on page 16. Please rise for the Amidah. Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Eloheinu, Tenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imahot, Umevi Geula Lifnei Vneihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magin. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Tagibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol, Hatarav Lehoshia. Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim. Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato Lishenei afar, mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech memit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, b'ne'eman ata lachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. And please be seated. We continue with a relatively quiet moment for personal prayer or reflection. Page 18. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon, v'chol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who are in need of healing. Tonight, we think especially of Marty Cohen, Alyssa Freeman, Beth Levine, Rabbi Jerry Levy, and Natalie Reiner. Are there other loved ones whose healing we wish to pray for tonight? With the power of community, we pray for their refuah shlema, their complete healing of body and or spirit, with the words of Misha Berach found at the bottom of page 20. Misha Berach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We continue on page 22. Please rise for the Aleinu prayer. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotze breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishbechot harama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, v'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yihyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who have passed away recently or at this time in years past. Tonight we remember with love Shadrach Nebeah, dear friend of Hannah Goldenson, Marlene Kane, mother of David Kane, and the yahrzeits of Florence Call, mother of Dina Maneker, Mildred Kaufman, aunt of Ed Kaufman, Rabbi Israel Kohler, former rabbi of Orami, father of Shoshana Arthur and father-in-law of Keith Arthur, Harvey Lampert, late husband of Evelyn Lampert, Catherine Nelson, mother of Bill Nelson, Ann Schulman, aunt of Judy Katzen, Sidney Schwartz, father of Fran Seiden, John Sequeira, father of Margaret Sequeira, Shirley Silver, mother of Judy Katzen, Chana Tolchinsky, mother of Yaakov Tolchinsky. Other loved ones we wish to remember tonight? Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. We continue as a community of support with the Mourner's Kaddish on page 24. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Yiruteh, V'yamlich Malchuteh, B'chayechon uvyomechon, Uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Halomei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal. Shmei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated. So I'd like to invite up Beth Jones to share some brief announcements on behalf of the board.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to some of our new guests today. So glad you're here. Brief announcements. Tomorrow there is security training here at 1 o'clock, so everyone is invited to that. It's from 1 to 3 tomorrow, and it's right here, correct? Right here at the temple. The other big announcement is we are in desperate need of ushers for High Holy services. So you only have to come to one. You only have to usher for 1 or 2 services. We're not asking you to usher for every service. So if you, I think there was a link in the email. If you could please just send your information to Jeff and Isabel. They would really appreciate that, helping out. And then the next big thing, I think, is opening day of religious school. So, and I believe you can register the day of. And so if you have neighbors or friends that have questions or just want to check things out, it'd be great to have them come by. And if you are interested in the book club and you read the book this month, just come see me later and I'll give you more details on where the book club is. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. We conclude our service on page 25 with Od Yavo, Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Thank you, Patricia, for playing tonight. Each year, ORME's Social Action Committee picks a theme for us to focus our learning and action around. This year, we have chosen a topic of increasing importance to people of all ages and backgrounds, which is mental health. Many mental health challenges that existed in our communities before the pandemic have been exacerbated by the stress, loss, and uncertainty we have all faced over the last few years. Tonight, we are privileged to have a guest speaker who will be sharing with us a bit about the impact that the pandemic has had on mental health and specifically domestic violence in our community and what we can do to help. So, Kaylee Smith is the Director of Outreach, Education, and Community Engagement at Safe Harbor, which is a nonprofit organization that helps survivors of sexual and domestic violence as well as human trafficking to overcome their crises and transform their lives. She is also the founder of Safe Bars RVA, a community group which trains bar and restaurant staff to recognize and respond to sexual aggression, harassment, and assault in places where alcohol is served. Kaylee received her BA in Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies from VCU in 2013 and has been involved in a variety of social justice communities for the past 9 years. So please join me in welcoming Kaylee tonight. So take just a minute to get the tech set up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for having me here and for letting me be part of your beautiful service. All right. So we're going to be covering some kind of heavy topics tonight. I just want to make sure everyone remembers, take some deep breaths while we're talking about this. It is kind of hard to get through. I'm going to try to make it a conversation rather than just a lecture. So please feel free to raise your hands if you have any questions or comments or anything throughout the presentation. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. So first, I just want to tell you about Safe Harbor, the organization I work for. Our mission is to provide the support that survivors of sexual and domestic violence and human trafficking need to overcome their crises and transform their lives. Our services we offer, we serve Henrico County primarily. We offer counseling for adult survivors of domestic and sexual violence. We offer counseling to youth ages 5 and up who've witnessed domestic or sexual violence, and youth ages 13 and up who've experienced dating violence or sexual violence. We do court advocacy, so we don't offer legal advice. We just simply help people kind of navigate the court process, particularly when they're getting protective orders. We have safe houses. We do emergency and transitional shelters for survivors of sexual and domestic violence, as well as survivors of human trafficking. The emergency shelters are exactly what they say they are. They're, in a pinch, they will shelter you. The transitional shelters offer more kind of wraparound care, so we help with getting people back to normal day-to-day life. So we help with job placement, we can get them clothes, we help with financial planning, healthcare, things like that. We do Our Heart, which is the Regional Hospital Accompaniment Response Team. It's an advocate that meets you at the hospital if you've gone through sexual or domestic violence and just kind of walks you through the process of getting forensic testing and everything like that. We run safe bars. This was my pet project I started before I worked at Safe Harbor, and I brought it to Safe Harbor with me. My background is in restaurant work, so I started safe bars while I was in restaurants. We also are a part of EmpowerNet. I'm going to talk a little bit more about EmpowerNet later, but it's a regional collaborative of all the sexual and domestic violence agencies in Central Virginia. It's great because it has a really easy to remember number. It's just 612-6126. So, talking about mental health, overall, things are tough. The World Health Organization reports a 25% increase in depression and anxiety worldwide in the first year of the pandemic. So that was a year ago, and things have not really gotten a whole lot easier in a lot of ways. People are experiencing a lot of negative emotional outcomes, a lot of grief from loss of milestones. So think of like high school students didn't get to go to prom, or I had a baby during the pandemic and no one was allowed to visit me. And just general normalcy, like we haven't had real normalcy in getting on 3 years. There's also been a lot of isolation from family, from friends, from support networks like Safe Harbor. And more recently, we're also seeing a resurgence of social anxiety. Being stuck in the house for ages didn't help us practice our social interactions. The effect was profoundly larger on youth who have less practice being in social situations. So if you go out and you feel awkward at parties or at restaurants, it's not just you, it's everyone. Everyone is feeling that. There's also a lot of increased stress. The 24-hour news cycle has been a thing for years, but it's certainly ramped up during the pandemic, and it's full of bad news. Health worries, COVID, we're in a pandemic. No one wants to get COVID. No one wants to get a cold or the flu during COVID. No one wants to go to the hospital during COVID. It's very worrisome. And keeping up with ever-changing protocols, whether we're wearing masks, we're not wearing masks. The CDC says this, the CDC says that. It's a lot to keep up with. It can be very stressful. Also, financial support programs coming and then leaving. The CARES Act was excellent for a lot of people, and now it's kind of gone in a lot of ways. A lot of people were relying on that, and now they can't rely on that. And then increased time in the home, especially during lockdowns early on in the pandemic, and not everyone has a great home life, so that created a lot of stress for a lot of people being trapped in their homes. Am I going too fast? No? Okay. Sometimes I talk fast when I get nervous. Sometimes I get nervous in front of crowds. We also saw a major effect on the professional world. We're seeing still staff shortages due to burnout, particularly in mental and physical health care and service industries. So those nurses in the ICU working with COVID patients and the counselors working with, anyone that is dealing with mental health struggles right now, which is many of us. And that has the effect of reducing accessibility to services, which adds stress to the general population, because if the nurses are all overworked dealing with COVID patients, they don't have as much energy for, you know, your ankle surgery or, I don't know, your bronchoscopy. My son just had a bronchoscopy, so that's why I'm thinking of that. So in the counseling world, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a psychological understanding of human needs. So it's basically, you have to get these things on the bottom before you can take care of the things higher up. During the pandemic, we saw a lot more people having trouble securing their needs on the physiological level. So people struggling with money and thus struggling with food. This isn't pandemic related, but right now people in Jackson are dealing with not being able to get water. That is incredibly stressful. And like I said, when you can't get those basic needs, you can't deal with the higher up needs, such as mental health struggles. So when people can't deal with the bottom stuff, they definitely can't deal with the top stuff. Close to home, how it's affected us at Safe Harbor. The pandemic has made abusers more active. We've definitely seen a major increase in issues of domestic violence because of the higher stress levels that I talked about. And all that extra time in the home gives them more time to monitor their victims. Our counseling list is longer than it's ever been, and more cases are deemed urgent. So when something's deemed urgent, it means that there's either a dire need for resources, such as food or shelter, or that there's an acute threat of violence. So, the violence is right there. We have more children witnessing violence. We have an increase in substance abuse issues. And we had to pivot to virtual in the beginning of the pandemic, which made access to some of our resources very difficult. You can't do a virtual food pantry. It just doesn't work. My job changed a lot. I do prevention work a lot of the times, so I try to prevent sexual and domestic violence. And for a long time, I was not doing any in-person situations like this. So fewer people had access to prevention talks. On a brighter note, there are ways to help. You can volunteer with Safe Harbor or your local shelter. Any man hours that we have volunteers working are man hours that our staff can spend doing more work. You can donate money or supplies to Safe Harbor or your local shelter. It doesn't have to be Safe Harbor. You can learn about and share local resources for mental health support. And I will share some resources at the end so you all have an idea of what's available. You can learn red flags of domestic and sexual violence and how to intervene. And we're going to talk about that too, don't worry. And lastly, you can engage in self-care for yourself. They say you can't pour water from an empty cup, so you can't really help others if you can't serve yourself first. A big thing is just turning off the news. If you're one of those households that constantly has CNN or Fox or CBS or whatever on, turning it off for a little while is great for your mental health. Getting into nature is awesome. And evaluating your relationships with food and substances. These are two things that when people are in times of turmoil, they tend to have unhealthy relationships with food and substances like alcohol, drugs, any of that. So just kind of keeping an eye on your relationship with those things can help do a lot for your self-care. Does anyone have questions so far? Okay, great.
I think we got one.
Oh, sure.
Do protective orders actually help? That's what I thought. Let somebody answer it.
They cannot physically keep someone from getting at somebody else, no. They do provide legal protections so that someone can get another protection order or someone can send someone to jail. Yes, that is the answer I have for that. I think they're worth getting just for a layer of protection. Whether they're entirely effective, they're not physical barriers. They're just not.
A lot of wall in the water.
Anyone else at the moment? Okay. We're going to pivot a little bit and talk about domestic violence more specifically. I heard that some people were interested in hearing kind of how you could spot domestic violence. So I just wanted to list a couple physical and emotional signs you could look out for if you suspect that a friend or family member or neighbor, community member is experiencing it. The physical ones are pretty obvious: black eyes, busted lips, red or purple marks on the neck, sprained wrists, bruises on the arms. The emotional signs are a little more nuanced and vague. Low self-esteem, overly apologetic or meek, fearful, changes in sleeping or eating patterns, someone that's anxious or on edge, substance abuse, symptoms of depression, loss of interest in once enjoyed activities and hobbies, or talking about suicide. And I say that this is nuanced because all of these can also be signs of a lot of things. I mean, they can also just be signs of depression. They can also be signs of other struggles at home that might not be domestic violence. So it's important to kind of take these things in context and really think through the nuances of them. So if you do suspect domestic violence in someone you care about, or someone you don't care about also, the best things you can do are, number one, make time for them. It's not an easy conversation to have, and it's unlikely that someone's going to just come up to you during a busy moment and say, hey, I'm experiencing domestic violence at home. So the first thing you want to do is make time. And start a conversation. Just ask them how they're doing, how things are at home. Listen without judgment. People stay in abusive relationships for a myriad of reasons. So it's really not anyone's place to judge why anyone would stay in an abusive relationship. The next thing is to believe the victim. If people tell you that they're experiencing violence, it's likely that they are, in fact, experiencing violence. Validate their feelings. So again, people are in these relationships for all different kinds of reasons, and that leads to all different kinds of feelings. So just because you imagine someone feels a certain way, it doesn't mean they do. So what you want to do is listen to them without judgment and reflect their feelings back to them. So I hear that you're feeling this, I respect that. Offer specific help if asked. Again, every situation is different, so you don't necessarily know exactly what kind of help they need until they ask you. And offer specific help. Don't necessarily just say, I'm here for you. Not that you would say it in that flippant way, I'm sorry. But yeah, offer specific things. I can give you a ride to Safe Harbor if you need, things like that. And help with a safety plan. A safety plan is basically a plan for what to do while someone is experiencing violence. Victims should have a plan in place if violence occurs again or if they decide to leave. Sometimes just the act of making the plan can sort of have a psychological effect that prepares them to leave more. Safety planning can involve things like a safe place to go. So next time you experience violence, you can come to my house, or you can go to Safe Harbor, or you can go to the YWCA. A prepared excuse for why they're leaving. A code word to alert family and friends so they're not sending out 30 text messages with a long explanation. They can just have that code word. A list of emergency contacts, and an escape bag with cash, important documents like driver's license, birth certificate, passport if you need it, toiletries, and clothes. What you don't want to do if you're dealing with someone that is experiencing domestic violence is bash the abuser. On average, it takes a survivor about 7 tries to leave their abuser. And so the last thing you want to do is set up a situation where you've said, well, so-and-so is a huge jerk. Why are you with him? He sucks. What you want to do is say, they should not be hitting you like that. So you want to focus on the behavior, not on the personality. Never blame the victim. I don't think I need to explain that. Don't underestimate the danger you or the victim might be in. The most dangerous time for a survivor of domestic violence is when they're trying to leave. And if you're involved in helping them, then that might put you in danger also. So don't underestimate that. Don't promise help you can't deliver. If it's, a family of 3 that is trying to leave their abuser and you have a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe you're not able to offer them a place to stay, but that's okay. You can offer them other things. If you don't drive, don't offer anyone rides, things like that. Don't give conditional support. So conditional support means if you leave them, I will do this for you, or if you act this certain way, I will help you. Every situation is different. Everyone's reaction to abuse is different. And so conditional support only puts pressure on them to act a way that might not feel natural or safe for them. Don't pressure the victim or make it more difficult for them. And don't give up. Like I said, on average, it takes 7 tries to leave an abuser. So it's not just a one and done kind of thing that you can do once and, yeah. As promised, some local resources. And I'll leave this up for a few minutes. EmpowerNet, I was already hyping it up a little bit. EmpowerNet is what I call the king of all hotlines. So you have all these different resources that serve different areas. So say you have a friend that lives in Henrico, but their partner lives in Goochland, but they're out at a bar in Richmond City and something happens and they need support or they need resources. But they're not sure, do I call Safe Harbor? Do I call YWCA? Do I call Goochland Cares? Who do I call? Call EmpowerNet, and EmpowerNet will match you up with the resources best suited for you, for where you are and what you need. And it's a collaborative project of all these agencies, which is great. That's what I have for you this evening. Does anyone have questions or comments? Yes?
Is this presentation available online?
I have to ask my boss about that.
Yeah, I was just wondering because of some of the numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
If I could just look it up here.
I can definitely send this slide to the rabbi to be emailed out if you like. Yep, I can do that. Yes?
I totally understand kind of going back to what you shouldn't do, right? Like, you should not put pressure on the person who is surviving the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I feel conflicted and a little bit torn if you come to the position where you know they have minors or dependents
Mm-hmm.
that are also in danger.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your recommendation if you know for a fact that there's children that may get, I don't know a better way to say it, caught in the crossfire?
Sure. I don't have a perfect answer for that.
That's fair.
I think the most you can do is just offer your support and offer resources. You can call Child Protective Services. I don't.
Then that person better be ready to get out of there.
Yeah, I don't know that that's always the best answer. Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if maybe there was another option I had not considered previously,
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation and the survivors, where they are mentally, and
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
Can you give us an idea of the percentages of men and women who are facing these issues? Is it more men, more women?
It's more women, but if I remember correctly, about 1 in 3 survivors are male. There is a particular stigma against reporting for men, because there just is a stigma against being a male survivor or being a male victim of violence. But yeah, it's men and women. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
What if you know somebody who's in a severely emotionally abusive situation, and say it hasn't escalated to violence yet?
Emotional abuse is domestic violence.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, emotional abuse absolutely counts as domestic violence. It doesn't have to be hitting or anything like that. Yeah. Yes.
Has human trafficking increased in this area in the last year or two? Is it stable? Is it decreasing?
So Richmond is in the top 20 jurisdictions in the U.S. for human trafficking. Because of our location at the intersection of 95 and 64, two major highways, and also our vicinity to Norfolk, the naval base. There's always a lot of trafficking near naval military bases. So yes, it has. To answer your question, the short answer is yes, it has increased. Yes, and it is a major issue in Richmond.
I'm sorry,
It's a major issue in Richmond.
yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for listening to me. Let me know if you need a card or anything, if you want to know more about our resources. I am available by phone, by email, to meet in person. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Should I leave this up?